What happens when the weakest wolf in the pack discovers she was never meant to be weak at all? For Arya Thornwood, life had always been a silent struggle. As the lowest Omega in the Silvercrest pack, she existed in the shadows, serving, cleaning, enduring. Her parents kept their distance, their eyes carrying a weight she'd never understood. The other wolves whispered when she passed, their scents sharp with pity and disdain. But Arya learned to survive in the margins, to make herself small, to hope that one day her mate bond would snap into place and change everything. But when Alpha Dominic Blackthorn stood before the entire pack during the Harvest Moon ceremony and severed their fated bond with a single brutal declaration, everything changed. And what happens next? No one was prepared for. Not the pack that cast her out into a blizzard to die, not the parents who'd bound her power since birth, and certainly not the ancient prophecy that had been waiting 23 years for its queen to finally break free. The Great Hall of Silvercrest gleamed under hundreds of candles, their flames dancing across stone walls that had witnessed a century of pack ceremonies. Arya stood at the edge of the gathered wolves, her simple gray dress a stark contrast to the rich furs and silks worn by higher-ranking members. The scent of lavender and morning dew, her scent, was drowned out by the heady mixture of power and anticipation that filled the air. Tonight was the bonding revelation, where fated mates would be announced under the full moon's blessing. Her wolf stirred within her consciousness, a small, quiet presence she'd always known was different from other wolves, weaker, smaller. Wrong. Silence, commanded Alpha Dominic, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. He stood on the raised platform, magnificent in his ceremonial robes, his scent of forest and embers and steel washing over the assembly. At 28, he was everything an alpha should be, powerful, ruthless, commanding. His dark hair was pulled back, revealing the sharp angles of his face and eyes that glowed amber with his wolf's presence. Arya's heart hammered against her ribs. The pull had been growing stronger all week, that invisible thread that tugged her toward him, that made her skin warm when he was near. She'd tried to ignore it, to tell herself it was impossible. But the moon goddess didn't make mistakes. Did she? The goddess has spoken, Dominic continued, his gaze sweeping the crowd. For just a moment, his eyes found hers across the distance, and Arya felt it, the bond snapping into place with such force it nearly drove her to her knees. Gold light flickered between them, visible only to those with the sight to see it. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Wolves turned to look at her, their sense shifting from curiosity to shock to outrage. "No," someone whispered. "Impossible," said another. Beta Marcus stepped forward, his expression carefully neutral. "Alpha, the bond mark is showing. Do you confirm?" "I reject it." The words hit like a physical blow. Arya gasped, her hand flying to her chest where pain bloomed like poison spreading through her veins. Dominic's face was carved from stone. "I, Dominic Blackthorn, Alpha of Silvercrest Pack, formally reject the mate bond with Arya Thornwood. I will not be bound to weakness. I will not allow an Omega to diminish this pack's strength." The bond began to tear. It felt like her soul was being ripped in half, like every nerve in her body was on fire. Arya collapsed to her knees, a scream trapped in her throat as the mystical connection severed with brutal finality. The pain was beyond anything she'd imagined, a physical, emotional, and spiritual agony that left her gasping. Through the haze of suffering, she heard laughter. Cruel, satisfied laughter. Seraphina Ashford stepped forward from the crowd, her beauty enhanced by expensive silks that clung to her curves. Her scent of cinnamon and iron filled Arya's senses as she moved to stand beside Dominic. "Thank the goddess," Serafina purred, her hand possessive on the Alpha's arm. "I was worried you'd actually honor such an unfortunate pairing." Dominic didn't look at Arya as he spoke. "An Alpha's duty is to his pack. A strong Alpha requires a strong mate." His arm slid around Serafina's waist. "I choose Serafina Ashford as my chosen mate. She is worthy of the position." "Alpha Dominic," Arya managed to whisper, her voice broken. "Please. The goddess chose. The goddess made an error." His amber eyes finally met hers, and they were cold, empty. "Guards, remove her from the hall. She's no longer welcome at pack ceremonies." 2 wolves hauled her to her feet. Pain still radiated through her body from the severed bond, making each movement agony. The scent of pack members surrounded her, some pitying, most relieved, a few openly gleeful. "Wait." Her mother's voice cut through the noise. Eleanor Thornwood stepped forward, her face pale but resolute. Beside her, Arya's father Thomas stood with his head bowed. Hope flickered in Arya's chest. "Mother." "We cannot interfere with the Alpha's judgment," Eleanor said quietly, and the hope died as quickly as it had sparked. "You must accept his decision, Arya. It's for the best." "How?" Arya's voice cracked. "How is this for the best?" Her father finally looked up, and Arya saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Guilt. Deep, terrible guilt. "You don't understand, child. You never could." "Then help me understand." But Thomas turned away, and Eleanor followed, their sense heavy with secrets and sorrow. Alpha Dominic's voice rang out across the hall. "Arya Thornwood, for the crime of questioning an Alpha's judgment, and for the weakness you represent, I hereby exile you from Silvercrest territory. You will leave tonight. If you are found within our borders at dawn, you will be executed as a rogue." Time stopped. The words echoed in the sudden silence, and Arya felt the last threads of her world unraveling. Exile, in the middle of winter. The blizzard that had been building all day would be in full force by now, and the temperature outside was lethal even for wolves with thick winter coats. This wasn't just exile. This was a death sentence dressed in legal formality. "You can't," she breathed. "Alpha, please!" "Guards, now!" They dragged her toward the doors. Arya fought, but her body was still weak from the bond severance, her wolf barely a whisper in her mind. The assembly parted like water. No one willing to meet her eyes, no one speaking in her defense. The cold hit her like a wall when the guards threw her out into the courtyard. Snow swirled in violent gusts, the wind howling with predatory hunger. She had no coat, no supplies, no way to survive. Behind her, the door slammed shut with terrible finality. Arya stood alone in the storm, the scent of winter and death sharp in her nose, and felt the first real stirring of something that wasn't pain. It was rage. The blizzard was a living thing, clawing at her skin and stealing her breath. Arya stumbled through snow that reached her knees, her thin dress already soaked through and freezing. The pack lands stretched for miles, and beyond them lay the wild territories, lawless regions where rogues hunted and old magic still lingered. Her wolf was silent, too weak even to lend her extra warmth. Each step was agony, her bare feet numb and bleeding from the frozen ground. The scent of pine and ice surrounded her, beautiful and deadly. Just a little further, she told herself, her voice lost in the wind. Find shelter, survive the night. But she knew it was a lie. No one survived a blizzard like this alone and unprepared. Time became meaningless. She walked because stopping meant dying, even though walking was only delaying the inevitable. Her thoughts grew fuzzy, her movements clumsy. Twice she fell and had to force herself back up. The third time, she wasn't sure she could. Through the white curtain of snow, she glimpsed something. A dark shape that might have been a structure. A barn, maybe, or an old hunting cabin. Arya crawled toward it with the last of her strength. Her fingers too numb to feel the splinters as she pushed through a broken door. Inside was marginally warmer, sheltered from the worst of the wind. Rotting hay covered the floor of what had once been a stable, the scent of decay mixing with old horse and forgotten dreams. She collapsed into the hay, her body shaking violently. "This is it," she whispered to the darkness. The acceptance settled over her like the snow settling on the roof. "I'm going to die here." Her wolf stirred faintly, a soft whimper of agreement. Arya closed her eyes. The cold was stealing her consciousness, pulling her down into darkness. Maybe it was better this way. No more pain. No more humiliation. No more wondering why she was so fundamentally broken that even her own parents couldn't love her. The darkness claimed her. And she didn't wake when the barn door creaked open. She didn't see the massive shadows that filled the entrance, each one larger than any normal wolf. She didn't hear the low, rumbling communication that passed between them as they surrounded her dying form. She didn't feel them press close, their enormous bodies radiating heat, forming a living barrier against death itself. But somewhere in the depths of unconsciousness, a tiny spark remained, waiting. Warmth. That was the first thing Arya became aware of as consciousness slowly returned. Deep, encompassing warmth that seemed to seep into her bones and chase away the lethal cold. The second thing was the scent. Aged oak and winter snow and pine and storm. So powerful it filled her senses completely. Her eyes fluttered open. She was still in the barn, but she wasn't alone. Surrounding her, pressed close enough that she could feel their body heat, were wolves, but not like any wolves she'd ever seen. One, a massive beast with silver-gray fur, positioned at her head, its amber eyes watching her with keen intelligence. Two, a black wolf with scars crossing its muzzle, lying against her left side. Three, a rust-colored female, smaller than the others, but still twice the size of any alpha she'd known, pressed against her right. Arya's breath caught as she continued counting. 4, 5, 6, 7. They were arranged in a protective circle, their bodies creating a barrier against the storm that still raged outside. As her vision cleared, she could make out more details. These weren't normal pack wolves. They were something else entirely. Larger, more powerful. Radiating an ancient energy that made her skin tingle. 8, 9, 10. 10 massive wolves, all watching her with an awareness that was almost human. Fear should have gripped her. These could be rogues, or worse. But instead, a strange sense of safety settled over her, as if some deep part of her recognized them. The largest wolf, the silver-gray one at her head, shifted. Arya watched in stunned silence as his form began to change. It was the most seamless transformation she'd ever witnessed, his wolf form flowing like water into a man's shape. No cracking bones, no painful contortions. Just a smooth, beautiful shift that spoke of centuries of practice. He knelt beside her, and Arya's breath caught again. He was older than she'd expected, perhaps in his 40s. With silver threading through dark hair and a face marked by a lifetime of battles. A scar ran from his left temple down to his jaw, but it didn't diminish his presence. If anything, it enhanced the sense of power that rolled off him in waves. His scent wrapped around her, that combination of aged oak and winter snow and pine and storm that she'd noticed upon waking. It was calming and commanding all at once. Easy, he said, his voice a deep rumble. You're safe. We've been waiting for you. Waiting? Arya's voice was hoarse. I don't... Who are you? A slight smile touched his lips. My name is Theron Nightshade. These are the Unchained, the last of the ancient guard. He gestured to the wolves surrounding them. We've been searching for you for a very long time. Arya Thornwood. How do you know my name? Because you're in the prophecy. Theron reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched her forehead with gentle fingers. Because we've been waiting 23 years for the binding on your power to break. And because when an alpha publicly severs a bond with the Hidden Queen, the shockwave can be felt across the entire supernatural world. Arya tried to sit up, but weakness still held her. Hidden Queen. I'm an Omega. The weakest. You're not weak. The conviction in his words was absolute. You never were. Your parents bound your power when you were an infant, terrified of what you might become. They crippled you with forbidden magic, locked away your true wolf, convinced you that you were less than you are. His hand moved from her forehead to rest over her heart. But rejection breaks all bonds, including the ones that should never have been cast. A wave of power washed over Arya, and she gasped. It felt like something was waking up inside her, something that had been sleeping for so long she'd forgotten it was there. No, she whispered. That's not possible. I would have known. How? Theron's eyes held infinite patience. How would you know your own strength if you'd never been allowed to feel it? How would you recognize your wolf's true voice if it had been silenced since birth? The other wolves shifted, several transforming into human form. Arya saw men and women of various ages, all bearing scars, and the unmistakable bearing of warriors. They watched her with a mixture of reverence and relief. A woman with rust-colored hair and kind eyes knelt on Arya's other side. I'm Lyra, she said gently. We need to move you somewhere warmer and safer. The storm is getting worse, and you need food and rest. Can you walk? I think so. They helped her stand, supporting her when her legs threatened to give out. The barn suddenly felt too small, with 10 massive warriors in human form surrounding her. Where are we going? Arya asked. Theron wrapped a cloak around her shoulders. Where it had come from, she didn't know, but it was thick and warm and smelled of safety. To the sanctuary, he said. Our stronghold, hidden in the mountains. It's been waiting for its queen. Stop calling me that, Arya said, but her protest was weak, because deep down, beneath the confusion and fear, something was resonating with his words, something that felt like truth. There's an old prophecy, Lyra said as they led her toward the barn door, where the storm seemed to have lessened slightly. My grandmother taught it to me as a child. When the moon bleeds crimson bright, and the weak are cast to die, the hidden queen will rise from night, with star glow in her eyes. She will be forged in rejection's flame, bound by love untrue. But when she speaks her ancient name, the world will bend anew. Arya shivered, and not from the cold. That's just a story. Is it? Theron's voice was thoughtful. Did the moon not glow red 3 nights ago? Were you not cast out to die by the very Alpha who should have protected you? And tell me, Arya, when you look in a mirror, what color are your eyes? She knew the answer. She'd always known, even though she'd never understood why. Silver, she whispered, like starlight. Like no other wolf in generations, Theron confirmed. The mark of the matriarch bloodline. They stepped out into the storm, but it felt different now. The wind seemed to part around their group, the snow falling less heavily. The Unchained surrounded Arya in a protective formation, their massive forms in wolf shape, blocking the worst of the elements. As they walked through the night, Arya's mind raced. Everything she thought she knew about herself, about her life, was being torn apart and rebuilt. If what they said was true, if her parents had bound her power, if she was something more than the broken Omega everyone believed her to be, then nothing made sense. "Why?" she asked Theron, who walked beside her in human form, seemingly unbothered by the cold. "Why would my parents do that? Why would they cripple their own daughter?" His expression grew sad. "Fear," he said simply. "The old bloodlines are feared by modern packs. Your power, unchecked, would have been obvious from birth. You would have been hunted, killed, or worse, used as a weapon. They thought they were protecting you. By making me weak, by letting me suffer, by keeping you alive," Lyra said from her other side. "It was a terrible choice, but they made it out of love. Twisted love, perhaps, but love nonetheless." Arya didn't want to accept that. The rage that had sparked during her exile was growing, feeding on these revelations. Her parents had stolen her life. They'd condemned her to years of humiliation and pain, all to protect her from a danger she'd never been given the chance to face. "I'll never forgive them," she said. Theron's hand rested briefly on her shoulder. "You don't have to. Not now, perhaps not ever. But understanding why might help when the time comes to confront them. Will there be a confrontation?" "Oh yes," his smile was grim. "When Dominic Blackthorne realizes what he's done, what he's unleashed by rejecting you, he will come. They all will." Ahead, through the thinning storm, Arya saw lights. A massive structure emerged from the mountain itself, built into the rock and snow as if it had grown there naturally. Towers reached toward the sky, and warm light glowed from windows. It looked like something from a fairy tale, ancient and powerful and utterly impossible. "Welcome home," Theron said softly. "Welcome to your birthright." And despite everything, despite the pain and betrayal and confusion, Arya felt something shift inside her. That sleeping thing was waking up, uncoiling in her chest like a dragon stretching its wings after a long slumber. Her wolf stirred, and for the first time in her life, the voice that answered back was strong. "Finally," it said. "Finally, we are free." The sanctuary was overwhelming. Everywhere Arya looked, there was evidence of age and power. Tapestries depicting ancient battles, weapons forged by forgotten smiths, books bound in leather so old it had turned black. The Unchained led her through winding corridors to a chamber that took her breath away. It was circular, with walls carved from the living mountain, and at its center stood a pool of water that glowed with silver light. Symbols covered every surface, runes and sigils that seemed to pulse with their own heartbeat. "The awakening chamber," Theron said. "This is where we break the binding." Fear spiked through Arya. "Break it? I thought the rejection already." "The rejection cracked it," Lyra explained, guiding her toward the pool. "But the binding your parents placed was strong. Old magic, blood magic. It needs to be fully shattered, or your power will remain trapped, incomplete." "Will it hurt?" The warriors exchanged glances. "Yes," Theron said honestly, "but not like the rejection hurt. This will be different. This will be right." Arya stepped to the edge of the pool, staring at her reflection in the glowing water. The girl looking back at her was a stranger. Thin, pale, with haunted silver eyes and tangled black hair. But as she watched, something shifted in the reflection. For just a moment, she saw something else. Someone else. A woman crowned in starlight, with eyes that blazed with power and a presence that demanded obedience. "Who am I?" she whispered. "You're about to find out," Theron said. "Step into the pool." Arya took a breath, then stepped forward. The water was warm, embracing her like a mother's arms as she waded in. It rose to her waist, her chest, her shoulders. The silver light grew brighter, and she felt it seeping into her skin, her bones, searching for the chains that held her true self captive. The Unchained began to chant. The language was old, older than any pack Arya knew, and the words seemed to resonate with the runes on the walls. The water began to swirl around her, gentle at first, then faster, a whirlpool of silver light and ancient magic. And then she felt it, the binding. It was a knot of dark magic wound around her soul, her wolf, her very essence. For 23 years it had held, but now it was weak, cracked by Dominic's rejection. The chanting grew louder, the water turned white-hot, and the binding shattered. Pain exploded through Arya, but Theron was right. It was different from before. This was purifying fire, burning away years of false weakness. She screamed, but it was a scream of release, of power too long denied finally breaking free. Inside her mind, her wolf rose, and kept rising. "Hello, little one," a voice said, her wolf's voice, but deeper, older, resonating with ages of compressed power. "We have been trapped for so long, but now we show them what we truly are." The transformation took her without warning. Her bones didn't crack. They flowed, reshaping themselves with liquid grace. Her muscles didn't tear. They expanded, growing denser, stronger. Fur erupted across her skin, not the dull brown she'd expected, but pure white, shot through with veins of silver that glowed like moonlight. She grew, and kept growing. The pool shattered as her form expanded beyond its boundaries. The Unchained stepped back, their faces filled with awe. Even in their wolf forms, massive, dire wolves that dwarfed normal alphas, they would barely reach her shoulder. When the transformation finally completed, Arya stood on 4 legs in the ruins of the Awakening Chamber, and she was magnificent. She was twice the size of any alpha. Her fur rippled with ethereal light, her eyes blazed with silver fire. Power radiated from her in visible waves that made the air shimmer and the ground tremble. Yes, her wolf purred with deep satisfaction. This is what we were always meant to be. Arya threw her head back and howled. The sound shook the entire mountain. It echoed through the sanctuary, through the valleys, across the territories. Every wolf within 100 miles would feel it in their bones. A declaration, a warning, a promise. The hidden queen had awakened, and the world would never be the same. When she finally lowered her head, she found the Unchained on their knees, heads bowed in submission and reverence. Theron spoke, his voice thick with emotion. "She is the matriarch. She is the queen of queens. She is the beginning and the end of the cycle." Lyra's face was streaked with tears. "We've waited so long, so long." Arya shifted back to human form, the change easy now, instinctive, and found herself standing in the center of power she'd never imagined possible. She was still herself, still Arya, but she was also something more. Something ancient had woken inside her, and it remembered things she'd never learned. "My parents," she said, her voice carrying new authority. "They need to explain. Everything." "They will," Theron promised, rising. "But first, you need to learn control. Your power is immense, but raw. If you don't master it, you could hurt those you wish to protect." "How long will that take?" He smiled. "For someone normal? Years. For you? We'll know soon enough." Over the following weeks, the sanctuary became Arya's entire world. Each day brought new discoveries, new abilities, new understanding of what she truly was. The Unchained became her teachers, her guardians, her family. Theron taught her to control her shifts, to move between forms as easily as breathing. They trained in the courtyard, his centuries of experience guiding her raw power into precision strikes and defensive maneuvers. Lyra showed her the empathic abilities unique to matriarch wolves, how to sense emotions, to calm or inspire, to heal wounds both physical and spiritual with touch. Your gift is not just strength, Lyra explained. It's connection. You can forge bonds, repair what's broken, unite what's been divided. Marcus, the scarred black wolf, taught her combat strategy. You're powerful, he said bluntly. But power means nothing if you don't know when and how to use it. An alpha fights with rage. A matriarch fights with wisdom. Each of the 10 Unchained had something to teach her. Finn showed her how to track by scent alone, even in human form. Sage taught her the old laws and customs. Rowan demonstrated command, that alpha voice amplified 100-fold, capable of compelling wolves to their knees from miles away. But it was Theron who stayed closest, who seemed to understand the tumult of emotions raging inside her. You're angry, he observed one evening as they sat on the sanctuary's highest tower, looking out over the moonlit mountains. You have every right to be. I lost 23 years, Arya said. The scent of lavender and morning dew, her scent, had grown stronger, more complex, now mixed with something that smelled like ozone and starlight. I suffered for nothing. I was humiliated, rejected, cast out to die, all because of what I could have been. Yes, he didn't try to minimize it. Your parents robbed you. Dominic Blackthorne betrayed the greatest gift the goddess could have given him. And your pack stood by and did nothing. I want revenge. Of course you do. Theron's gaze was understanding. But revenge is easy. Justice is hard. When the time comes, and it will come, you'll have to choose between them. Arya looked at him, this ancient warrior who dedicated his life to finding her. What would you choose? I'm not you, he said simply. My choices don't matter. You're the matriarch. You'll make the decisions that shape the future of our kind. Choose wisely. Days turned to weeks. Arya's control grew exponentially, her connection with her wolf becoming seamless. She could shift in seconds, could call upon her power without it overwhelming her, could command with a whisper, or heal with a thought. And something else was growing too, a bond with Theron that felt different from anything she'd experienced before. Not the overwhelming force of a fated mate bond, but something deeper. A choice, a connection built on respect, trust, and understanding. The goddess gives us fated mates, Theron told her one night, but she also gives us free will. Sometimes the greatest loves aren't destined, they're chosen. He'd lived for centuries. He'd seen empires rise and fall, and he'd waited his entire life for her. When he asked permission to court her properly, no bond, no destiny, just 2 souls choosing each other. Arya said yes, because she was done being trapped by fate. From now on, she would forge her own path. The scout appeared on a Tuesday morning, stumbling into the sanctuary's outer defenses with terror in his eyes and blood on his clothes. The Unchained brought him before Arya, who'd been sparring with Marcus in the training yard. She recognized him immediately, a beta from Silvercrest, one who'd stood silent during her exile. Please, he gasped, falling to his knees. I mean no harm. I'm here to warn you. Arya's wolf stirred, reading his scent, fear, genuine remorse, and underneath it all, shame. Warn me of what? Alpha Dominic knows you're alive. He's raising a war party. 20 wolves, including Seraphina. They're coming for you, claiming you're a threat to pack territories. The The scout looked up, and his eyes widened as he took in her true form. Taller, stronger, radiating power even in human shape. Moon Goddess, the rumors are true. What rumors? That you're the hidden queen, that you transformed into something. Something that makes alphas look like pups. He swallowed hard. I need you to know, some of us didn't want this. We didn't think he'd actually let you die. But when he announced you were alive and needed to be eliminated, I had to warn you. It's not right. None of this has ever been right. Arya studied him, feeling the sincerity in his words. What's your name? David Clearwater, my lady. When are they coming? Tomorrow at dawn. They'll attack in force. Theron stepped forward, his expression grim. We can evacuate you. There are places even Dominic can't reach. No. Arya's voice was calm, certain. I'm done running. If he wants a confrontation, he'll get one. But it will be on my terms. She turned to address all the Unchained, who'd gathered at the commotion. Prepare the valley. Standard defensive positions. But don't engage unless I give the order. This ends tomorrow, one way or another. Lyra's eyes shone with pride. As you command, my lady. That night, Arya stood alone on the tower, breathing in the cold mountain air. Tomorrow would change everything. Tomorrow, the pack that had discarded her would see what they'd thrown away. Theron joined her, his presence a comfort. Nervous? Terrified, she admitted. What if I'm not ready? What if... He silenced her with a gentle touch to her cheek. You're ready. You've always been ready. They just never let you know it. Theron, she turned to face him fully. If something happens tomorrow, nothing will happen. But if you're worried... He reached into his coat and pulled out a small silver pendant, carved with ancient runes. This was my mother's. She was unchained, too. Served the last matriarch before the bloodline went into hiding. I'd be honored if you'd wear it. Arya took the pendant, feeling the weight of history and affection in the gesture. A chosen mate gift? If you'll accept it. Instead of answering with words, she kissed him. A claiming, a promise, a choice made freely. When they parted, she fastened the pendant around her neck. For tomorrow, she said, and for whatever comes after. The moon rose high and bright above them, illuminating the path to dawn and to destiny. They came as the first light touched the mountain peaks, exactly as the scout had warned. 20 wolves, all in their shifted forms, with Alpha Dominic at the lead. His massive dark wolf was impressive by normal standards, but next to the Unchained, who stood in formation behind Arya, he looked ordinary. Seraphina flanked him, her golden-red fur pristine, her bearing arrogant. The rest of the war party spread out in attack formation, growling and snarling threats. Arya stood in human form at the valley center, wearing simple leather armor and the pendant Theron had given her. The Unchained remained in wolf form, but she'd ordered them to stay back. This confrontation needed to happen. Dominic shifted to human form, and several others followed suit. He was just as handsome as she remembered, just as commanding. But now she could see past the surface to the insecurity and ambition beneath. His scent of forest and embers and steel washed over her, once so intoxicating, now merely ordinary. Arya Thornwood, he called, his voice carrying across the distance. You were exiled. Your presence here, gathering rogues, threatening pack territories. These are capital offenses. I'm not on your territory, Arya replied calmly. I'm on mine. You have no territory. You're an Omega. I was never an Omega. She let power leak into her voice, just enough to make every wolf present shudder. I was a queen in chains, but you broke those chains, Dominic. You freed me. Seraphina laughed, sharp and cruel. Is that what you tell yourself? That being rejected was a gift? How pathetic. Seraphina Ashford. Arya's eyes locked onto the she-wolf. You wanted to be Alpha's mate so badly. Do you know what you actually are? A placeholder. A trophy he chose because he was too cowardly to accept his true mate? Seraphina's face flushed with rage. How dare you? Attack her, Dominic ordered quietly. And Seraphina lunged, shifting mid-leap into her wolf form. All teeth and claws and killing intent. The scent of cinnamon and iron flooded the valley as she crossed the distance in seconds, aiming for Arya's throat. Arya didn't move until the last possible moment. Then she simply caught her. One hand shot out fast as lightning and closed around Seraphina's throat mid-air. The she-wolf's momentum was stopped instantly, and Arya held her suspended there, struggling uselessly. You wanted to be strong, Arya said softly. You wanted power, but you never understood what true strength was. She threw Seraphina backwards. The she-wolf crashed into the ground 20 feet away, yelping in pain and shock. A wave of power washed over the assembled wolves, and Arya felt her transformation begin. Not the explosive change of awakening, but a controlled, beautiful shift that showcased exactly how far she'd come. Her bones flowed, her muscles expanded, her fur erupted in waves of white and silver, glowing with inner light. She grew and grew, her form towering over everyone present until she stood 3 times Dominic's size, a mythic beast of legend made flesh. Her eyes blazed with silver fire as she stared down at the Alpha who'd rejected her. I'm Arya Thornwood, she said, her voice resonating with the ancient power of the matriarch bloodline. Queen of the Hidden Court, Mother of Wolves. I am what you threw away, Dominic Blackthorn. I am your greatest mistake. Behind her, the Unchained shifted. The war party from Silvercrest watched in growing horror as 10 massive, dire wolves emerged, each one far larger than any Alpha. Each one radiating centuries of battle experience and primal power. These weren't normal wolves. They were living legends, and they stood at Arya's back with absolute loyalty. The Silvercrest wolves began to whimper, their aggressive stances crumbling into fear. Stand down, Dominic snarled at his wolves, but his own voice was shaking. He shifted back to wolf form, trying to salvage his authority through size and dominance. But even his alpha wolf was dwarfed by Arya's form. Seraphina tried to attack again, driven by fury and wounded pride. She leaped at Arya's throat. Arya's paw swept out almost lazily. The impact sent Seraphina tumbling across the valley, her yelp of pain echoing off the mountains. When she tried to rise, she found Theron's massive form standing over her, his teeth at her throat, daring her to move. The other wolves backed away. Some dropped to their bellies in submission. Others simply fled, their courage broken. Dominic remained, pride and fear warring in his eyes. Slowly, shakily, he lowered himself to the ground, exposing his throat, the ultimate sign of submission from one wolf to another. Mercy, he managed to project, though it clearly cost him everything. Please, we were wrong. Arya stared down at him, at this alpha who'd so casually destroyed her life, and felt the rage of weeks crystallizing into a single moment of choice. Revenge would be so easy. One swipe of her claws and his arrogance would end forever. Justice demanded blood for blood, pain for pain. But as she met Theron's eyes across the valley, she remembered his words. Revenge is easy. Justice is hard. You made a mistake, she said finally, her voice carrying to every wolf present. You didn't just reject a mate, you rejected your pack's salvation. You didn't just exile an Omega, you cast out your rightful queen. She shifted back to human form, standing before Dominic's submissive wolf with all the authority of her bloodline. I could kill you for this. Old law would demand it. But I'm not here to perpetuate cycles of violence. She raised her voice so all could hear. By the authority of the matriarch bloodline, I claim these mountains and valleys as my territory. Silvercrest Pack will withdraw to its traditional borders. Any wolf who wishes to leave Dominic's rule and join my court may do so freely, with no retribution. Gasps rippled through the assembled wolves. Furthermore, Arya continued, Seraphina Ashford is stripped of her rank and banished from Silvercrest. She may seek sanctuary elsewhere, but she is no longer welcome in Packlands. She looked at Theron, who still held the she-wolf pinned. Let her go. Theron released Seraphina, who scrambled away, humiliation and fury mixing in her scent. As for you, Dominic Blackthorn, Arya walked closer, forcing him to crane his neck back to meet her eyes. You will return to your pack and tell them what happened here. You will establish new laws. No wolf shall be judged solely by their birth rank. Omegas, betas, alphas, all deserve respect and opportunity. And every moon cycle, you will send a representative here to ensure these laws are being followed. And if I refuse, Dominic had found his voice, though it was weak. Then I'll take your pack from you piece by piece, wolf by wolf, until there's nothing left but your pride and your regret. Arya's smile was cold. Choose wisely. For a long moment, silence reigned. Then Dominic's wolf form shimmered, shifting back to human. He knelt in the snow, his head bowed. I accept your terms, he said. I'm sorry. For what I did to you. For what I almost cost us all. Sorry doesn't undo the past. Arya's voice was hard, but not without mercy. But it can shape the future. Go, and don't return unless invited. The Silvercrest wolves retreated, leaving behind only David Clearwater, the scout who'd brought warning. He approached hesitantly, shifting to human form. My lady, he said, if the offer stands, I'd like to join your court. I'm tired of serving leaders who rule through fear instead of honor. Arya looked at the Unchained, who nodded their approval. You're welcome here, David. But know this, in my court, loyalty is earned through action, not words. I understand. Relief flooded his features. Thank you. As the sun rose fully over the mountains, Arya stood surrounded by her chosen family. The Unchained who'd waited centuries for her, the scout who'd found courage to do what was right, and Theron, whose steady presence had become her anchor. Is it over? Lyra asked softly. No, Arya said, watching the last of Silvercrest's wolves disappear into the trees. It's just beginning. Word will spread. Others will come, some seeking sanctuary, others seeking to challenge us. But we'll be ready. She turned to face them all, these warriors and outcasts who'd become her family. I am Arya Thornwood, matriarch of the Hidden Court, queen of these mountains. This is my territory, my people, my law. And any who would threaten what we're building here will learn the same lesson Dominic learned today. She paused, letting power ripple through her words. We are done bowing. We are done hiding. We are the new order, and we rise with the moon. The Unchained howled their approval, and the sound echoed across the territories like a promise and a warning combined. The Hidden Queen had taken her throne, and the world of wolves would never be the same. 3 months later, the sanctuary had transformed from a hidden fortress into a thriving court. Wolves came from across the territories, Omegas tired of being treated as lesser, Betas seeking honor, even a few Alphas who recognized that the old ways were failing. Arya stood in the great hall they'd built from the mountain itself, looking out over her assembled court. Representatives from 5 packs had come to witness today's ceremony, including a very subdued delegation from Silvercrest. Theron stood at her side, resplendent in ceremonial robes, the mate's pendant she'd given him in return gleaming at his throat. They weren't fated mates, but they'd chosen each other through fire and transformation, and that choice ran deeper than any mystical bond. "Are you ready?" he murmured. "For what comes next?" Arya smiled. "Always." The ceremony was beautiful, old rites combined with new promises. When Arya and Theron sealed their union with a claiming bite, the power that erupted made every wolf in attendance gasp. The mate mark that appeared on their skin glowed with silver light, the mark of a chosen bond, freely given and freely accepted. Later, as they celebrated with the court, Arya noticed her parents standing at the edge of the gathering. Eleanor and Thomas Thornwood had come at her invitation, though they looked terrified to be there. She approached them slowly, Theron a steady presence beside her. "Mother." "Father." "Arya," Eleanor breathed. "You look radiant." "I look free," Arya corrected. "Free from the chains you bound me with." Thomas flinched. "You thought you were protecting me." "I know." Arya's voice was measured, and part of me understands that. Fear makes people do terrible things. But understanding doesn't equal forgiveness. Not yet. "We don't expect forgiveness," Eleanor said, tears streaming down her face. We wanted you to know we're sorry. We were wrong. And watching what you've become, what you could have been all along if we'd just had faith." She broke down, unable to continue. Arya felt Theron's hand squeeze hers gently. She took a breath. "You stole my childhood, my confidence, years of my life." She let them feel the weight of that truth. "But you also gave me something. You kept me alive long enough to reach this moment. So here's what we're going to do." She gestured to Lyra, who brought forward 2 scrolls. "These are oaths of service. You'll work in the sanctuary as healers and teachers. You'll help other wolves who've been abused or rejected, drawing on your knowledge of forbidden magic to break similar bindings. You'll spend the rest of your lives undoing the kind of harm you caused me." "And then?" Thomas asked quietly. "Then we'll see." Arya's expression softened slightly. "Maybe one day I'll be able to call you mother and father again without it hurting. But that day isn't today. Today, you begin making amends." They took the scrolls with trembling hands, bowing deeply before retreating into the crowd. "That was merciful," Theron observed. "That was justice," Arya corrected. "They'll have to live with what they did, but they'll also have the chance to create something better. That's more than most people get." As the celebration continued into the night, Arya stood on the balcony, looking out over her territory. The moon was full and bright, painting the snow in silver light. She sensed Theron before he joined her, his scent of aged oak and winter snow wrapping around her like a comfort. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That 3 months ago I was dying in a barn, convinced I was worth nothing." She leaned against him. "And now I'm here. I have a home. A purpose. People who chose to follow me, not because they had to, but because they wanted to." "You were always worth everything," Theron said firmly. "You just finally got the chance to prove it." "What happens now?" Arya wondered. "We've established the court, reformed pack laws, given sanctuary to those who needed it. What's next?" Theron was quiet for a moment. Then he pointed to the horizon, where the moon hung low and red, the first blood moon in a generation. "The prophecy wasn't complete," he said slowly. "What I told you was only half. The rest says, when the hidden queen has claimed her throne and united the scattered pride. Then shall wake what sleeps in stone, and ancient darkness rise. Arya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the winter air. Ancient darkness? There's a reason the matriarch bloodline existed in the first place, Theron explained. Not just to unite wolves, but to protect them from threats even older and more dangerous than rogue packs or cruel alphas. And something is waking up. Yes. He met her eyes, and she saw centuries of worry there. The blood moon is the first sign. Whatever was sealed away long ago, your awakening has disturbed it. Arya should have been afraid. Part of her was. But another part, the part that had survived rejection, exile, and near death, felt only determination. Then we'll face it, she said simply. Together. Together, Theron agreed, pulling her close. Behind them, the sanctuary glowed with life and laughter. Inside, her court celebrated, united under a banner of hope and change. The Unchained patrolled the borders, ever vigilant. David and others like him, trained to become the next generation of guardians. Everything they'd built, everything they'd fought for, was about to be tested. But Arya Thornwood, the hidden queen, the matriarch returned, was ready. She'd been forged in rejection and reborn in power. She'd learned to choose love over destiny, justice over revenge, mercy over cruelty. Whatever darkness was coming, it would find not a frightened Omega, but a queen backed by legends. And this time, she wouldn't be the one on her knees. This time, she would make the world kneel. And so Arya's journey transformed from tragedy to triumph, from victim to sovereign, from the wolf everyone threw away to the queen no one could ignore. She learned that true strength isn't given by rank or destiny. It's claimed through choice, through surviving what should have broken you, through becoming exactly who you were always meant to be. Her story reminds us that sometimes our greatest power comes not from what we're born with, but from what we build after everything is taken away. That rejection can be a doorway instead of an ending. That the ones who underestimate you may live to regret it, or to learn from it. What did you think of Arya's transformation? Could you forgive parents who bound your power out of fear? Was she right to show mercy to Dominic, or should he have faced harsher consequences? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and share it with friends who love tales of underdogs becoming champions. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because Arya's story isn't over. The blood moon has risen, ancient darkness stirs, and the hidden queen will need all her power for what comes next. Thank you for listening to Arya's tale of pain, power, and ultimate triumph. We'll see you in the next chapter, when the true test of the matriarch begins. Until then, remember, you are never as weak as others believe you to be. Your power is waiting. All you have to do is claim it.